They called it the world's factory. Computers, clothes and toys once poured off the production lines here, destined for export to the West, but no more. China's manufacturing hub of Dong Guan has been at the sharp end of the global economic crisis. With mile after mile of deserted factories, it's a scene of industrial devastation on a vast scale.
金融海嘯之後，其實睇嗰個情況一路喺度變壞咧，同埋睇到啲客嗰個落單嘅情況咧，其實係好擔心啊。
Up to 30 million Chinese are now jobless, says the central government, and for most, there's no safety net. There are no reliable figures for the number of factory closures in South China, but one report says it could be as high as 60,000.
Then the local government had to pay them.
This abandoned printing plant is one of them. We've managed to get in here by posing as potential buyers for this now empty factory. And this scene, of course, is being replicated hundreds, if not thousands of times across southern China at the moment. The story here is that the factory closed last October and more than 1,000 workers lost their jobs, and the owner has now fled. He fled without paying his workers, prompting a large protest that not long ago would have been quelled by police with brute force.
And the Dong Guan cities.
This time it was settled with government cash. So the government had to give the workers money?
Yeah. Every factory now in China is like that. Right. If the boss run away, then the local government had to pay the workers.
My guide is Tanley from Hong Kong, owner of the toy factory next door and a very worried man these days.
2008年上半年，即係講緊可能7月份之前，其實單好多，數量又大，其實好忙，個整個廠都好忙。但係去到9月份、10月份之後咧，就明顯覺得好似我諗覺得可能坐直升機咁樣，即係下滑咁，客所有嘅單好似突然間消失晒，冇再同你傾翻咯。咁同埋見到出邊周圍啲廠咧，其實大間細間嘅咧，即係喺10月份之後咧，不斷地倒閉啦，或者老細走咗啦，等等，其實明顯覺得即係突然間即係轉得好犀利咯嚇。
April and May are traditionally the months when his company would receive large orders for Christmas. So far, Tanley has none. Most of his 300 employees are poor migrants from China's inner provinces. 19-year-old Wang Dongxian is worker number 27. Her wage varies. She's on what's called piece rates.
工资就是按计件，如果你做的多就发的多，就是这样的。
Most expect to work 6 days a week. 16-hour days are common. But it's work that allows Wang to dream of a better life.
存着的话，以后那个还是读书吧，因为我那个从学校毕业以后就没有，因为我没有在学校读书嘛，只是那个自读，然后在学校考试那种。
90% of the soft toys made here are for export. This shipment should have left for France in February, but the buyer cancelled at the last moment. Here they are, your workers.
Yes.
Do they understand really what's going on outside?
I'm worrying for them, but they don't.
They don't seem concerned at all.
I think so.
But you're concerned for them?
Yes, I'm worrying about the future and also the workers. Yeah.
Their future is in your hands.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a big responsibility for you.
So it's difficult. Yeah.
This was once one of Dong Guan's busiest streets. But on a recent Friday lunchtime, normally one of the busiest periods of the week, it was practically deserted. Dong Guan feels like a dying city.
我有時行到入嚟，即係靜到好得人驚嗰種感覺咯嚇。其實呢啲廠執笠啊，或者係放假等等咁，啲人人少咗，咁其實係成個連鎖反應到包括出邊嗰啲娛樂啊、餐飲啊，其實連街邊嗰啲小食店啊、賣快餐嗰啲都係一樣冇晒生意，有啲真係唔見咗人。
What will happen? Is it over for places like Dong Guan? I mean, are they finished?
I tend to think so.
Hong Kong-based political scientist Professor Joseph CHENG has often been a staunch critic of the mainland government.
I tend to believe that these factories will seek places offering cheaper labor, cheaper land. And in fact, this whole process has been taking place even before the financial tsunami.
Manufacturers are fleeing inland to cheaper provinces, yet the economic collapse hasn't deterred jobless migrants trying their luck here. Zhao Zhenqi and his friend Duan Mingkei are from Guizhou province, one of China's poorest. Zhao is 20 and wants a job that pays around 1,000 yuan a month. That's about 190 Australian dollars. But after a week of job hunting, he's prepared to accept less.
普工860块钱还可以吧？
可以，他说真正的给了860是可以的。他问题就是有时候给860，他扣你其他嘛，你扣起来还不是就没多少。
只能做普工了。
其他你做什么？
3行业。
你没技术就只做普工。
But Duan's prospects aren't much better when he calls a job centre.
工资是不是按照你们那个？
He wants to be a security guard, but at 40 is told he's too old.
没有了。
Undeterred, they go to the job centre anyway. But there's a catch.
要交200块钱才报警。
什么？
交200块钱。
交200块钱。
嗯。
有没有合适的工作？
有时候就是在协商里面了。
On the day I met them, Zhao was down to his last few dollars. As a migrant, he's not entitled to welfare or unemployment benefit outside his home province, so his situation's becoming desperate.
现在我也说不出来，那个肯定很担忧。现在经济也没有，现在吃的也没办法，现在不知道怎么办。
Well, this is a very sensitive time for China, which is why we're here unofficially. It's sensitive because it's 60 years since the communists came to power, 20 since the massacre in Tiananmen Square, and now China finds itself at the sharp end of this economic crisis. No wonder the central government is worried. This was Dong Guan 6 months ago, when riot police were deployed after a protest by jobless toy workers threatened to turn ugly. These days, such scenes are happening more and more frequently.
Yes, Chinese leaders are very sensitive. They certainly feel a little bit insecure, and that is exactly why there's no more talk of political reforms.
There are 250 million migrant workers in China, and around a fifth of them are now in Guangdong. Each day, thousands throng the commercially run employment exchanges. They scan notice boards. I check a newspaper that lists what's available today in local industries. What other jobs can you see?
Here is the factory jobs, but they're only looking for female, age between 18 to 28.
For those lucky enough to find a job, they're paying up to 40% less than they did a year ago. These days, a salary of $8 a day is typical, but even here, that's barely a subsistence wage. With millions of university graduates now swelling the ranks of job hunters, most are having to lower expectations.
尤其在现在这么竞争的年代，是不是？有的文凭比我们高的，大学毕业的比我们还高。 好像我们都没有这种优势去跟人家竞争，很担心的，其实很担心的。
At a recruitment center in the boom city of Shenzhen, I met Li Xishuan. He has a wife and baby to support in faraway Shaanxi province, and is surprised salaries are not higher. Like other jobless migrants I spoke to, he believes that some of the adverts here are fakes, because whether the job is real or not, the applicant still has to pay a fee.
也就是这么说吧，基本上可以说贴在外面的都是假，基本上都是假的。当然也有的是真的，有的也是真的，它都是真假不分的。现在真假不分，因为它毕竟是个什么？毕竟是个市场嘛，它是个人才市场，它是要收费的，它就是盈利的，它就是为了利润。
Li wants to be a traditional Chinese doctor, but can't afford the course. He's worried, but not angry, like jobless workers in Europe or America right now.
And there's a difference between Europe and China in the sense that a lot of the unemployed can go back to their villages where they have accommodation, they have basic food. It's subsistence only in the absence of a satisfactory social security net.
To commuters on the morning ferry to Hong Kong Island, he's just another parent taking his children to school. Few realize that 20 years ago, Han Dongfang was a protest leader in Tiananmen Square. While students called for democracy, Han championed workers' rights.
No one standing on the workers' side. It's just sick.
Han was jailed without trial for 2 years. Although now banned from mainland China, he's allowed to remain in Hong Kong.
We always hear that China is now a modern country and the workers have never been better off than they are.
No, we didn't hear that. And we all know that the workers are working in one of the worst situations. And the workers' rights is one of the worst in the world. We never heard about that the workers in China are better off.
He broadcasts a weekly show on Radio Free Asia, funded by the US government, which reaches over 20 million mainland Chinese. That makes Han Dongfang a potent voice, even in exile.
你好，是韩东方啊。韩同志你好。啊，那个你现在方便了吗？
The calls cover the gamut of labour grievances in today's China, workers whose factories have closed to those planning strikes.
是不是你们厂这个财政状况受这个金融危机影响，还是怎么？
也有可能。
有可能。
Industrial action is still illegal in China, but strikes are happening every day, he says.
The government, one, have not enough prison to keep these workers, of course. Second, it's a bad image if the workers go on strike only for asking for legal payment. And you arrest them, you sentence them. Of course, it's a bad image for the government.
So we're seeing some change, China almost tolerating dissent in the workplace.
Yes, this is the case. This is what we call a very soft-handed approach in dealing with unrest. At least the top officials, they understand they don't want to exacerbate the tensions, to sharpen the contradictions.
That's progress.
That is progress. This is progress in the absence of genuine democracy, a more tolerant authoritarian regime.
都是表现的是一种
Han Dongfang says there's ample evidence of factory owners using the economic crisis as a pretext to cut pay and conditions.
This is definitely not the best way that employers kick out the workers who get sickness and fire them without compensation. So that is definitely not the right way, and the workers' rights are being violated, and the government will get trouble too. 那你是得了职业病，是什么病啊？
Today he's talking to a jewellery worker, one of 50 diagnosed with an incurable lung disease, and now fighting the factory boss for compensation.
全厂的工资都是12月份的工资才发到。
对。
那为什么是这样呢？
The caller lives in Haiphong, a small but historic city 300 kilometers from Hong Kong. What we found here tells you much about how China's transition to a free market economy has often come at a terrible price for its workers. What's different now, though, is the willingness of many of them to speak up and demand legal redress. I don't go to their homes. They worry about company thugs who've been watching them. So we meet in the private room of a restaurant in a nearby town. Shong Gaolin is the worker I've come to meet, along with 2 others. He describes the symptoms of his deadly lung disease, known as silicosis.
胸闷、胸痛、胸闷、胸痛就是有时候咳嗽，那一种，稍微走路走快一点上楼就觉得很喘不过气来那种感觉，很累那种，一天就是没有精神，四肢无力那种，就是那种症状。
He believes he contracted the illness grinding semi-precious stones. In theory, they should get to present their case in court, but the problem is there's a huge backlog. More than 100,000 disputes were filed in the first 3 months of this year alone.
情况跟我这样的有此地有几十个，都是像我这样的事情，都是他们就是说你身体啊有问题啊，他就要把你抄掉，或者你自己写个辞工书啊，赔你3个月啊，是不是啊？他说你不签的话是就1分钱都没有，有的胆子小就马上就签了，就是我都没有签。
The local media's ignored their campaign. Taking the risk of talking to a foreign journalist is a measure of their desperation.
他读书读得相当好，他。
Shong Gaolin was fired after refusing to accept a compensation offer of 2 months' salary.
厂里面就是我找过就是有关的领导嘛，他说就是没得治，你那个治疗有没用的，就是不必要治疗，那个尘肺病是没得治的，是我们搞哦是啊，他说就是反正不给你治，你想怎么样的怎么样，不管你那么多，他就是那说，是啊，你说，他就叫我你要去死吧。 他就是那个削签那个屌毛那样说的。
It's hard to verify any of these claims because the company wouldn't return our calls or emails. But this is their sprawling factory complex on the outskirts of Haiphong, with its darkly ironic name. CHENG has been on sick leave since December, but so far has only received 1 month's pay. He desperately needs the money to buy medicine. Before I left, the group wanted to show me Haiphong's most famous landmark. So it's a local revolutionary hero. For Chen, his wife Ran Ki-mei and their family, such outings are more precious now. Ran worked at the factory too, and also has silicosis.
现在我已经是2期息会了嘛，现在基本上都不能做事，就是整天在家里玩，稍微变一下天气就会感冒，走路就不要走得太快，走得太快就会上气不接下气嘛，就喘气嘛。最严重的就是到3期，到3期以后基本上就是1年多2年时间都会没命了。就是我这是06年就检查出来2期，可能现在应该快到3期了，差不多了。
Her biggest concern is to ensure there's enough money to take care of her 6-year-old son Chen Ling and his sister.
这又害了我们，又害了小孩子，害了几代人。
And she has one wish, that her son never works in a factory.